The engine was dying. Smoke filled the cockpit. Oil pressure was gone, and somewhere up ahead, cutting through the clouds at nearly 600 miles per hour, was the future of warfare, a German jet, the Messerschmitt Me 162. He had seconds. No gun sight, no power. Just instinct, training, and luck. The Mustang's propeller coughed once, twice, then caught again, barely. He pushed forward, pulling every ounce of life left in that battered machine. No one had ever done it before. A piston-driven fighter, crippled and trailing oil, chasing a jet. But Lieutenant Urban Eldrew wasn't thinking about records, he was thinking about staying alive. And then, in a single breathtaking burst of courage, he made history. This is the true story of the man who used a broken plane to shoot down a jet and lived to tell the tale. It was 1944. The sky over Europe belonged to chaos. The Allies were pushing deeper into Nazi-occupied territory. American bombers filled the skies over Germany by the hundreds, their silver wings glinting in the weak northern sun. Below them, anti-aircraft fire erupted like fireworks. The war in the air was brutal, mechanical, and unrelenting. The Germans were desperate. Their cities were burning, their oil reserves were vanishing. But in secret hangars and underground facilities, engineers were building something that could change everything, a weapon decades ahead of its time. The Messerschmitt Me 162, the world's first operational jet fighter, fast, sleek, terrifyingly advanced. Capable of speeds over 540 miles per hour, more than 100 faster than any Allied aircraft. It was a machine that promised to reverse Germany's fate. And for the pilots of the Allied air forces, it was a nightmare given wings. Against this backdrop flew Lieutenant Urban Leonard Drew, been to his friends of the 361st Fighter Group, United States Army Air Forces. He was 21, cocky, fearless, and very, very good. Born in Detroit, Michigan, Drew grew up surrounded by the mechanical hum of the Motor City. Engines, gears, and speed were in his blood long before he ever saw an airplane. By 1944, he was flying one of the finest fighters in the world, the North American P-51 Mustang. It was fast, agile, and long-ranged, designed to escort bombers deep into German territory. The pilots who flew them had one mission: protect the bombers and kill anything that tried to stop them. But what no one expected was that the Luftwaffe would unleash a weapon from the future. By late 1944, the Me 162 had entered combat. Jet engines howled across Europe for the first time. American and British pilots were stunned. The first encounters were brief, almost ghostly. The jets appeared, struck, and vanished. They couldn't be caught in level flight. They couldn't be outrun. One British pilot described them as shadows of thunder. The only weakness of the German jet was during takeoff and landing. That was the moment Allied pilots could strike. The orders soon followed: destroy the jets on the ground, catch them before they fly. And for Lieutenant Ben Drew, that chance would come sooner than anyone expected. October 7, 1944, an airfield in Bottisham, England. But his gun sight was dead. The flak had knocked it out. He'd have to aim by instinct. He squeezed the trigger. A burst of .50 caliber rounds tore through the air. The tracers found their mark. Slamming into the jet's engine, flames erupted. The 262 pitched up, then rolled over, crashing in a ball of fire. One jet down, but there was no time to celebrate. The second jet was trying to land. Drew banked hard, following it through a curtain of smoke. His own engine was dying, oil pressure zero. The propeller began to blur with vibration, but he kept his gun steady. At 1,000 feet above the airfield, he fired again. The second Me 162 burst into flames, sliding off the runway and exploding. 2 kills, both jets, with a broken plane. The first recorded instance in history of a propeller-driven aircraft downing a jet, not once, but twice, but the victory came at a price. His engine finally gave up, the propeller froze. He was deep in enemy territory, losing altitude fast. Drew had minutes, maybe less. He trimmed the controls, searching for friendly lines. Nothing but farmland and smoke. "All right, girl," he whispered, "one last ride." He glided as far as he could, then spotted a clearing. At barely 100 miles per hour, He pulled the Mustang's nose up and dropped her onto the field. The impact was brutal, metal twisted, glass shattered. But the Detroit Miss skidded to a halt. Ben Drew was alive. He climbed out, dazed but breathing, surrounded by silence. When he returned to his squadron days later, few believed him. To jet kills in one mission. With a damaged plane, it sounded impossible. His gun camera had failed during the fight, destroyed by the flak that damaged his gun sight. Without film, there was no proof. For decades, his claim remained unconfirmed, a legend whispered among pilots. But in 1983, nearly 40 years later, German records were finally declassified. They told the truth. To Me-62s, destroyed near Akmer Airfield on October 7, 1944, exactly as Drew had described. He was vindicated and awarded the Air Force Cross. The battle between Ben Drew's P-51 and the Me-62s was more than just a duel of machines. It was the moment the world saw the end of one era and the beginning of another. The propeller versus the jet, the past fighting the future. The Me-62 was an engineering marvel, but it arrived too late. The German factories were bombed relentlessly. The jet engines were fragile, requiring exotic alloys Germany could barely produce. Each flight risked catastrophic failure. Meanwhile, the Allies had numbers, logistics, and fuel. In the months that followed, the few operational Me-62s were hunted mercilessly. The pilots who flew them were brave, but hopelessly outnumbered. Even so, their appearance changed everything. They forced the Allies to rethink air strategy, to develop radar-guided interception, longer-range fighters, and eventually outjet programs of their own. Within a few years, every major air force on Earth would fly jets. But in that twilight between old and new, men like Ben Drew proved that courage and skill could bridge even the greatest technological gap. Years later, when asked about that day, Drew didn't speak of glory. He just smiled and said, "She brought me home. The Detroit Miss, she brought me home." He lived to see the dawn of the jet age, an age his courage helped usher in. The broken plane that shouldn't have survived, the pilot who refused to quit. And the moment when one man, in one impossible chase, outflew the future itself. This was the story of the pilot who used a broken plane to shoot down a jet, and survived.